Spend enough time on the Appalachian Trail, and you start picking up on things that aren't in the guidebooks.
You learn to read the dirt, and you learn to listen to the silence.
Eventually, you figure out there are parts of these mountains you just shouldn't walk through. Thousands of people try to walk the whole 2,000 miles from Georgia to Maine in a single season. We call it a thru-hike, and it becomes your entire world.
You strip your life down to a 30-pound pack, and you just walk until your knees grind.
If you're anything like I was, you pride yourself on being an absolute purist. We call it white blazing. It means you pass every single white rectangle painted on those trees. Never skipping a mile. Never taking a shortcut.
But there's a secret kept among the seasoned hikers and the trail angels.
It's an 11-mile stretch in Virginia that almost nobody hikes twice. The ones who really know about it won't even step foot in there. They call it the Blackwood Gap bypass, though you won't find that name on any map. It's a deeply folded section of mountains south of Roanoke. The ridges crowd together so tight that the valleys barely ever see the sun. When hikers get close to this section, something weird happens. People who hiked through blizzards will suddenly call a shuttle to skip ahead 12 miles. Nobody calls them out on it, and the drivers don't ask any questions. I was 28 when I attempted my thru-hike. I was a former Wildland Firefighter, and honestly, I was pretty arrogant. I thought I knew everything about surviving in the dirt. I had heard the rumors about those 11 miles. Stories about heavy air, missing time, and people coming out the other side with vacant eyes. I figured it was just ghost stories meant to scare the weekend backpackers. When I reached the road crossing south of that ridge, the shuttle driver offered me a ride. I just smiled, patted my chest, and told him I was a purist. I was hiking every single mile. I'll never forget the look that older man gave me. He was just filled with this profound, hollow pity. He didn't say a word. He just got in his van and drove away, leaving me at the tree line. The second my boots hit the dirt, everything just shifted. These mountains are ancient, but this spot didn't just feel old. It felt completely dead. Like walking into a sealed cave where the air's gone bad. The trail choked up right away. Thick rhododendron bushes twisted together, making this dark, waxy tunnel right over my head. The light turned this sickly, bruised color that messed with my depth perception. Shadows were pooling everywhere, stretching way too long for the middle of the afternoon. And the quiet. It was the kind of quiet that actually makes your ears ring. Usually, these woods are deafening in the spring. But out there, nothing. Just the heavy crunch of my boots. And even that sounded muffled, like the trees were swallowing the noise. I pushed deep into that 11-mile stretch for about 4 hours. The trail markers were completely faded, covered up by this weird pale green lichen. Nobody was maintaining this path. I was constantly climbing over massive rotting tree trunks just to keep moving forward. The higher I climbed, the colder it got. But it wasn't that crisp mountain air you'd expect. It was this damp, underground chill that just seeped right into my joints. By sunset, I was completely wiped out. My pack felt like it was full of lead. The woods went pitch black fast. I found a small clearing off the trail, surrounded by these massive dead hemlock trees. I set up my tent as fast as I could. My fingers were so numb I could barely stake out the guy lines in the fog. I didn't even bother with a fire. I just boiled some water and ate in total silence. I kept catching myself looking over my shoulder into the dark. The silence out there was so heavy. It felt like it was physically pressing against me. I zipped myself into my sleeping bag and tried to read by my headlamp, but I couldn't focus on a single word. I didn't feel hidden at all. I felt completely exposed, like I was lying on an operating table, just waiting for something to happen. Around 2 in the morning, something pulled me out of sleep. I woke up with my heart just hammering against my ribs. I lay there, perfectly still in the pitch black. It was freezing cold. At first, all I could hear was my own blood rushing in my ears. And then, I heard footsteps. They were slow, deliberate, moving through the dead leaves about 30 yards out. Crunch. Pause. Crunch. Suddenly, he had a chilling realization. It wasn't an animal. It was the distinct sound of a man walking in the dark. I slowly reached out and grabbed my hunting knife. I waited for whoever it was to call out. But it wasn't the footsteps that made my blood run cold. It was the voice. Just a whisper. But it cut right through that dead air. And I knew it. It was my mom. She said, "Daniel, leave that stray alone. It's gonna bite you." I completely stopped breathing. My hand locked around that knife so hard, my knuckles popped. It was coming from the dark, just outside. Her exact cadence. That's exactly what she told me when I was 9. I was trying to coax a stray dog out from under our porch. A totally random, buried memory. But there it was, drifting out of the pitch-black woods. Spoken by something pacing right outside. I tried to rationalize it. Told myself it was just exhaustion and isolation playing tricks on me. I squeezed my eyes shut, hugged my knife, and counted backwards. Eventually, the footsteps stopped. I lay awake for hours until the sky finally turned gray. When morning broke, I packed up my camp in a total panic. I didn't even bother making coffee. I just had to get out of there. I figured I only had about 7 miles left. If I pushed hard, I'd be out by the afternoon. But the trail wasn't going to let me go that easy. Right away, the geography just felt wrong. The path kept twisting back on itself. Those rhododendron tunnels got tighter and tighter. The branches scraped against my pack like hands trying to pull me back. Every time I climbed out of a ravine, nothing looked familiar. I pulled out my compass to get my bearings. But the needle was just drifting. It wouldn't point north. It just spun in these slow, mocking circles. The sky was just a solid, featureless gray. No sun, no shadows to tell the time. I hiked for 10 straight hours until I was ready to collapse. I was sweating through my clothes in the freezing cold. I was caught in a loop. When darkness started bleeding back into the woods, I broke down. I didn't even mean to. The tears just started falling from pure frustration and exhaustion. I was a grown man, a seasoned outdoorsman, and I was completely at the mercy of something I couldn't understand. I had no choice but to set up camp for a second night. I pitched the tent in record time. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely work the zippers. I crawled into my sleeping bag fully clothed, boots and all. I didn't even turn my headlamp on. I didn't even bother turning my headlamp on. I just sat there in the pitch black, gripping my trekking pole and my knife. I knew whatever was out there was coming back. The woods went completely dead silent again. The temperature dropped so fast I could literally see my breath pluming in the dark. This thick, freezing fog just rolled right over the ridge and started seeping into the tent. Right in the dead of night, the footsteps came back. But this time, it wasn't just one thing out there. There were 3 of them. They started circling my tent, moving with this awful, disjointed rhythm. Step, drag. Step, step, drag. It sounded like things that had completely forgotten how legs were supposed to work.
like they were trying to remember how to walk while pacing around my shelter. And then the voices started up.
It wasn't just a whisper from the tree line anymore. They were way closer this time, maybe 15 feet away, and there were a lot of them. I heard my older brother's voice first, sounding super aggressive. He threatened to break my jaw if I told our dad about a dented fender. It was a secret conversation we had in our driveway when I was 14. Then, right over his voice, came my ex-fiancée, Sarah. She told me she couldn't keep waiting for me to grow up. It had the exact same tremor of heartbreak from the night she packed her bags and left. Then my mom's voice chimed in, but this time she was screaming. They were literally reciting my life back to me, pulling my most private memories and layering them into this sickening chorus. The voices were accurate, but the tone underneath was just flat and hungry. I dropped my knife and clamped my hands over my ears as hard as I could. I just squeezed my eyes shut and rocked back and forth in my sleeping bag. I was hyperventilating so hard I couldn't catch my breath. I buried my face in my knees and begged them to stop. And instantly, the voices just cut off. The dragging footsteps stopped completely. For a long, agonizing minute, there was just absolute perfect silence. For a long, agonizing minute, there was just absolute perfect silence. The kind of heavy silence you only hear at the bottom of the ocean. Then, right beside my head, dry leaves crunched. Something had stepped right up to the edge of the tent. A massive shadow fell across the fabric of the tent, lit up by the faint moonlight. It was impossibly tall, and its proportions were just all wrong. The shoulders were way too narrow, and the limbs had too many joints. It looked like some kind of giant, twisted praying mantis. It leaned down slowly, pressing its face right against the outside of my shelter. It pushed so hard, the thin nylon bowed inward, stopping just inches from my own face. I could hear its wet, ragged breathing vibrating right through the material. I was completely trapped, unable to move a single muscle. And then, it spoke to me, not using a memory, and not in the voice of anyone I knew. It sounded like grinding stones and dead leaves scraping across pavement. It whispered, "He is holding his breath," narrating my terror in real time. "He is clenching his fists," the grinding voice hissed through the fabric. "He wants to fight. He thinks he's a brave man, but he has nothing to hit." My entire body was locked in this state of primal, freezing shock. The adrenaline pumping through my system was so thick it honestly felt like poison. I just sat there with tears streaming down my face, listening to the wet, ragged breathing of whatever was crouching right outside. Then another voice whispered, sounding like a chorus of drowning men. "He is crying like a little boy." They stayed out there for hours, just breaking my mind down piece by piece. They dissected my courage, laying bare every insecurity and regret I'd ever felt. I really don't know how I survived that night. I didn't fight back, and I didn't yell. Eventually, my mind just shut down to protect itself from completely fracturing, and I blacked out. When I finally opened my eyes, the pale light of dawn was filtering through the tent. The suffocating pressure in the air had actually lifted a bit. The smell of copper and ozone was gone, replaced by normal damp dirt and pine needles. I was still alive, but the woods outside were dead silent. I didn't even try to pack my gear. I left my expensive tent, my sleeping bag, and my stove right where they were.
I just grabbed my backpack and shoved my wallet, keys, and water bottle inside. Survival instinct had completely taken over. I just needed to get out of there.
I unzipped the tent fly and just ran.
I left hundreds of dollars of gear behind in that clearing without a second thought.
I sprinted down the trail, ignoring the branches tearing at my face and clothes.
I didn't look back, terrified I'd see them standing in the fog watching me go.
I ran for what felt like hours. My lungs were burning, and my legs were just about ready to give out. My boots kept slipping on wet roots, but I wasn't going to stop. Those branches were tearing up my face, but I didn't care.
Suddenly, the dense green tunnel just broke open.
The trees parted, and I stumbled out onto a gravel Forest Service road. The sky above me was actually blue. It felt like I had just breached the surface after nearly drowning. My momentum carried me forward until my legs just gave out. I fell hard to my hands and knees in the dirt. I could feel the actual warmth of the sun on my neck. I could hear normal birds singing in the trees again. I sat back in the gravel, completely overwhelmed. The tears started falling again, but this time it was just pure relief. I wept in the dirt until I started to dry heave. The mountain had broken me, but I was alive. About 20 minutes passed while I sat there trying to pull myself together. Then, I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. I looked up and saw a battered white shuttle van rattling up the road. It was like a lifeline appearing out of nowhere. The van slowed down and pulled over to the shoulder. Through the dusty windshield, I saw the driver. It was the exact same guy from 2 days ago. The one who offered me the ride around the bypass. He saw me sitting there, pale as a ghost and shaking. He didn't look surprised to see me without my gear. He didn't ask what happened, or why I looked like I'd aged 10 years. He just put it in park, got out, and opened the sliding door. His eyes had that same profound, hollow pity. Without a word, he helped me up from the dirt. My legs were trembling so badly I could barely stand. He guided me into the back seat of the van. He handed me some water and draped a thick wool blanket over my shoulders. I sat huddled under that blanket, clutching the water bottle. The adrenaline was finally leaving my system, just leaving me completely hollowed out. The driver closed the door and climbed back into his seat. He put the van in gear and the engine rumbled to life. He looked at me in the rearview mirror. His eyes were heavy with that same unspoken grief. He'd seen this before. He'd picked up other hikers who thought they were tougher than the mountain. He just asked quietly, "The trail ends here for you, doesn't it, son?" I just nodded. I couldn't even speak. I never finished the Appalachian Trail. I went back home to the Pacific Northwest, and I never put on a backpack again. I quit the fire service. I took a boring office job right in the middle of the city. I needed to be surrounded by concrete, noise, and people. I sleep with the TV on and a heavy box fan running on high every single night. I just can't stand the silence anymore. If it gets too quiet, my mind goes right back to those woods. People ask me sometimes why I quit. They want to know why a guy who lived for the outdoors just walked away after making it all the way to Virginia. They don't get it. I usually just tell them I blew out my knee. I say I tore my meniscus and the doctor told me I couldn't carry the weight anymore. It's a clean, easy excuse. It's a lot easier than trying to explain the truth. It's easier than telling them what's really out there. There are things living in those deep, sunless hollows of the Appalachians that are older than humanity. They don't hunt your body for meat. They hunt your mind for sport. They hollow out your memories, steal the voices of the people you love, and wear them like masks in the dark. And sometimes, When I'm alone in my apartment, the power goes out. The TV dies. The fan stops, and the night gets perfectly, breathlessly quiet. I can still hear them. Drifting out of the dark corners of the hallway. My mom, my brother, my ex, whispering my own secrets right back to me, telling me that I'm holding my breath, knowing exactly how scared I am, just waiting for me to turn around. I just sit there in the dark, paralyzed, knowing it followed me all the way home. But you know what the real nightmare is? It's knowing that the trail is still out there. Deep down in Virginia, that bypass hasn't changed. Those rhododendron tunnels are still choking out the sun, still casting that sick, bruised light over the dirt. The white blazes are still fading on the deadwood, covered up by that pale green lichen. And the silence out there is still absolute, just waiting to swallow you whole. When night falls, that freezing fog still rolls in, creeping through the dead hemlocks, filling up that empty clearing where I left my life behind. And down at the road crossing, that battered white shuttle van is still parked there, waiting at the edge of the tree line on those damp afternoons. The old driver is still leaning against the hood, smoking his cigarettes, still carrying that hollow pity in his eyes, 'cause he knows exactly what's up on that ridge. He watches the next wave of hikers roll up. Young, arrogant purists with heavy packs. Kids with something to prove, refusing to take the ride around the gap. He doesn't try to stop them. Doesn't offer a single word of warning. He just takes a drag of his cigarette and watches them step off the pavement. The second they step into the trees, everything changes. Suffocating. The air goes completely dead and stagnant, and those ancient woods just swallow them up without a trace. These mountains are older than humanity. They've been wearing down for hundreds of millions of years, keeping their secrets buried deep in the sunless hollows, just waiting for the next person to listen to the silence. I took an office job right in the middle of the city. Figured being surrounded by concrete and noise would keep the woods out of my head. But honestly, even in a packed room, I've never felt more alone. People always ask me why I quit the fire service. Why a guy who lived for the outdoors just packed it up and walked away.
I usually just tell them I blew out with me.
It's a lot easier than trying to explain the truth.
How are you supposed to tell people what's really out there?
That there are things in those sunless hollows that are older than humanity itself. Things that don't want your meat, but hunt your mind for sport. I sleep with the TV on and a heavy box fan running on high every single night. I gotta keep the noise going, because if it gets quiet, I'm right back in that tent. The noise is the only thing keeping the memories out. Those things, they hollow out your memories and steal the voices of the people you love. They wear them like masks in the dark. But sometimes the power grid fails. And when I'm sitting here all alone, everything just shuts off. The fan stops, the TV dies, and it goes pitch black. The silence that hits you isn't just quiet. It's heavy. It feels exactly like the dead air out on that trail. It gets so breathlessly quiet, I can't even move. I just sit there praying to hear a siren or a car outside. But instead, I hear them, drifting right out of the dark corners of my own hallway. It's my mom, my brother, my ex, whispering my own secrets back to me in that same flat, hungry tone, telling me that I'm holding my breath. I just sit there in the dark, completely paralyzed. I don't dare move a muscle. Say, in a natural American voice, final, chilling thought,
I'm just waiting, absolutely terrified, to turn around.
I never turn around.
I just sit there, frozen, staring straight ahead until the sun finally comes up. Because I know what's waiting for me if I do. I know that a part of me never actually left those woods. Somewhere out there in Virginia, that stretch of trail is still waiting. Just sitting there in the dead, heavy air. The shuttle drivers are still out there, dropping people off at the edge of the tree line. They don't say a word. They just watch you walk away with that same hollow pity in their eyes. And every year, some arrogant kid with a brand new backpack decides he's going to hike every single mile. He's going to be a purist. He's going to walk right past the warnings. My tent is probably still out there, rotting away in the dirt under those dead hemlocks. A little monument to the night I lost my mind. A trophy for whatever's still pacing around in the fog. Because there are things out there that don't hunt your body for meat. They hunt your mind for sport. And they never let you go. I survived the Blackwood Gap, or at least my body did. I made it back to civilization. Back to the noise and the concrete.
I really thought I was going to be safe here.
But it doesn't matter how far away I run from that place, or how loud I turn up the TV in my living room. Those mountains are older than we can even begin to comprehend. And they don't forget the people who wander into their dark corners. They keep a piece of you trapped out there in the cold. And they keep it forever. Because once you finally hear the silence beneath the noise of the woods, you realize that it never actually stops listening to you. It's just waiting for you to turn around.